SiriusXM keeps truck drivers informed and entertained with coast-to-coast coverage across the U.S. and Canada. Listen to what you love from anywhere on the road with 24/7 ad-free music plus sports, news, talk, and comedy. Hear your favorites on every haul for just $6.06 a month. Sign up at SiriusXMFleet.com. Welcome to The Long Haul, the podcast dedicated to empowering small carriers and owner-operators to drive their business forward. I'm your host, Adam Wingfield, bringing you insights from industry leaders, real-world success stories, and strategies to help you navigate the road to profitability. Whether you're just getting started or looking to take your fleet to the next level, this is the show where trucking meets opportunity. So buckle up, it's time to go the distance. Welcome back, everybody, to an exciting episode of the Long Haul Podcast brought to you by Freightways Playbook. I am super excited to continue our journey as we go through with these episodes that's specific in terms of giving you information that works best for you. We try to provide insights. We'll have guests that are in the industry, and the main point of the guest is to make sure that they bring value to you, the listener, so that way you can implement those in your business or even your personal life as well. Today, I'm excited to be joined by a gentleman who's no stranger to the Freightways platform, but at the same time, also he has an amazing story to tell in terms of his health and also from an entrepreneurial journey perspective. I'm really excited about bringing this guest on today. His name's Garrett Steenblik. Garrett, welcome to the Long Haul Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Adam. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thanks for coming along, man. I really wanted to just dig into your journey, man. You're an owner-operator, you behind the wheel of the truck, but you also wear a lot of different hats. Just take us back prior to getting in the truck, and let's talk about what brought you into the industry as a whole and what excited you about being a truck driver.
Absolutely. So what got me into the industry was my search for independence and personal growth. So when I was a young man, I was faced with a decision whether or not I was going to study nuclear physics, spend a long time in college, and ultimately go after a doctorate and spend a lot of money towards a career where I didn't know what kind of return I would have. I didn't know how much I'd be gate capped, and I'd be essentially serving someone else. And it was between that or make the decision to work alongside my wife and to be able to have the freedom to explore the country, build my own business, create my autonomy, and make something that I could scale to provide additional value in the future. So trucking was freedom for me, and I made that choice.
Now, let's go back a little bit before that. Go back to the college. You talked about nuclear physics. You talked about just spending a lot of time in school, man. Where did that come from? What was that all about?
So what it was about for me was when I was 23, I'd spent a lot of time trying to figure out who I was, working odd jobs. And then I went to Georgia Piedmont Technical College. I showed up, I took the Compass exam, and then I met my wife, right? And I had essentially a free ride scholarship through whatever degree I wanted. I was seriously considering nuclear physics. But then I ended up changing my mind because I wanted to go over the road cross country with her.
What was your first driving job? What did that look like?
So it was Everett Express. It was really amazing. My wife and I decided that we wanted to separate first before we drove as a team because we both wanted enough experience that we could be comfortable and confident sleeping while the other one's driving. So I ended up driving with Everett Express, moving on to Transport America, and then we ended up teaming together at Boyle Transportation, which was a really amazing honor. They're a fantastic company. From there, we moved over to Tri-State Motor Transit Co., became an owner-operator, ended up doing some really amazing work that makes me very proud, serving the military, serving really amazing customers. And then from there, I built my businesses that we're talking about today.
So reflecting on your journey as an owner-operator, you got to an interesting place on a personal side, right? So and if I can just go back a little bit, you had weight issues, and being a truck driver specifically, that's a hard place to be to have those type of issues. I want you to talk a little bit about those issues that you had specifically about that, because looking at you on the screen now and then looking at some of your old pictures, man, it's not even the same person. Like, just let's back up a little bit. Let's back it up a little bit. You got a pretty exciting, pretty inspiring journey from a health standpoint that needs to be discussed, and I want to talk a little bit about that. You're about 200 pounds lighter.
Absolutely. Yeah. So going all the way back when I got into the trucking industry, I weighed 360 pounds and I had fatty liver disease. I was throwing up daily. It was a huge struggle for me. I was incredibly depressed as well. So I'd gone through a long history of physical and sexual abuse as a young man. And that was a big part of why it took me so long, the age of 23, to really figure out what I wanted to do with my life, because there was a consistent path of self development that I had to engage in order to get to the point where I was comfortable knowing who I was. And when I got into the trucking industry, I ended up finding myself through the process of discipline, of consistently having to apply myself to the hours of service, to planning routes, to making sure that I was in alignment with the hazmat regulations. And that daily structure began to help me understand that I could take that structure and apply it to who I was and how I was living my life. And trucking didn't become this place where I was restricted from being able to have my health. It was this place where I could develop the mindset necessary in order to take the actions to lose the weight. So for me, I say trucking was my access to freedom because it was access to discipline. So what I ended up doing was going on a journey of implementing exercise and then implementing dietary changes. And then from those dietary changes, I started feeling better, thinking more clearly. I was consuming less sugar. I was drinking more water. And then as a result, my neurochemistry was better. Because of that, I was able to implement stricter protocols where I was then tracking how many calories were going in my body versus how many were going out my body. And when I turned it into metrics, when I turned it into trackable things, similar to how I was doing with my routes, similar to how I was doing with my pay and my finances, I then got the results that I wanted out of my life. And I
You,
ended up losing 200 pounds.
yeah, if you
Funny you
mentioned.
should say that I'm not even the same person. My dad likes to say I'm half the man I used to be, literally.
You know, the crazy thing about that is that, you know, and for the people that are listening, were you always overweight? Was that something that you were a kid? Were you the chunky kid? Was it something that, you know, you've always battled, or was it just like, hey, I got behind the wheel of the truck and I just became, I mean, for a lack of a better term,
No.
obese? Like, what happened? How did it? I mean, where did it come from? Where those extra 260
Yeah.
pounds
So
come from?
as a young man, what ended up happening was I was fine. I was a skinny guy. But then all of the depression caught up with me when I got out on my own and I started living by myself. I didn't know how to regulate my own emotions. I got in a series of bad relationships. And what ended up happening was not only was I working a desk job, but I was eating my feelings away and I wasn't doing anything about it. And every day I would get up and say, I have to feel good enough to get this done. I have to feel good enough to eat better. I have to feel good enough and motivated to make a difference. And I never felt any different. And it never made me take the actions necessary to take control of my health. So I actually gained the weight outside of the truck and ended up
Mhm.
losing the weight inside of the truck. Before I got into the trucking industry, I was, for most of my life, a skinny person. But depression, mood instability, and a history of trauma caught up with me, and I just let myself completely go. It took me only about 2 years to gain all of that weight because I wasn't doing anything but sitting at a desk.
Now, you also talked about just the shift, the mindset shift that it took. Was there anything specific that you did that said that at one point you was like, you know what, this has got to change? I mean, because you hit the nail on the head. You know, one of the things that many drivers struggle with silently are just mental health, whether it's the just, hey, you know what, I don't have anybody out here to talk to for long periods of time. You know, you feel lonely out there. You know, just talk a little bit about that specific part of it, that specific component.
So the specific mindset shift that made all the difference in me was the understanding that the way I had done things had created who I was. I actually was bent over a toilet in a truck stop, puking my guts out, and I got up and I looked in the mirror, and the guy that I saw looking back at me, I hated him, right? And I realized that in that moment, I made him. I made him in entirety. And the only way I could unmake him is if I changed the focal length of my behavior, of my thought, and I did something entirely new. So I realized that if I tried to act on the way I felt in this moment, I would keep doing the same things. So regardless of how I felt, I just had to take the actions that made me into a different person until I was getting the reward of the good feelings from the results. And so I created this mental picture in my head of who I was going to be. I tried to see the guy that I was going to be in the mirror someday. And then I held on to that image so that I could both love that person enough and hate myself enough in the moment to get past the struggle of dealing with the limitations of my behavior, the limitations of my body, and to be able to move from the point where, you can't see much progress in the beginning of working out, right? To the point where after applying the consistent effort, I can then refocus and enjoy being participatory in the results that I was getting from that effort. Simply put, I just realized that, okay, I made this guy. The only way I'm going to make a new person is if I start acting differently. And then I allow myself to believe in who I'm going to be long enough to get to that point, applying the effort.
So what were some of the biggest just obstacles you faced during your weight loss journey, and what did you do to overcome those things?
Man, the biggest obstacle was a lack of information. When I first got started, I was just running in place, trying to lose the weight by working out. I was running 45 minutes a day. On my 30-minute breaks, I just get out and I do a quick jog and I turn that quick jog into sprinting. And that got a lot of the weight off my body very quickly. But I didn't really think effectively about changing my diet. I was outrunning a bad diet. And eventually that caught up with me. And when I started to plateau, my biggest struggle was that I felt that I was the problem. There was something with me. There was something special about me as to why I couldn't continue to lose the rest of the weight. This is a very common thing I hear of truck drivers. Oh, my body's just like this. Oh, my metabolism's just like this. Oh, I'm a bigger guy. And so I started thinking these things. I was surrounded by that kind of culture. And then I ended up coming across Bob Perry's content, Bob Perry, the trucker trainer at Boyle Transportation, right? And so I gained back a lot of the weight that I'd lost, which was 100 pounds at that point, right? Just through exercise alone. And so what I ended up doing was learning about common sense strength training, learning about really modulating my diet, really learning about whole foods and the kinds of things that I should be eating that are nutrient dense and calorically light. And so I started implementing that a little bit more loosely. And then I started to get the progress because I was not eating carbs. I was not eating really hefty, chunky foods that were mostly filler and calories rather than what my body needed to function. So what ended up happening for me was I realized essentially what happens is if you don't have the information, you can't make the right decisions. And I think that's the most difficult thing for truck drivers or anyone going on any kind of weight loss journey. Because initially what you're doing is you're trying to make steps to become a new person. And it's uncomfortable to get outside of your existing models of behavior and acquire new information at the same time. It can make it especially challenging if you try to do too many things at once, right? If you try to change your eating, you try to change your exercise behaviors, you try to track everything all at once. It's really easy to get overwhelmed. So specifically, the biggest thing that was an issue for me was lack of information. It took me years to not only put in the actions, get the results, but have the accurate information because there's so many different sources, right, necessary that would work for me to get the results that I wanted.
All right, so the lifestyle of a owner operating driver is completely difficult, and it's really really tough to balance not only being on the road and the obligations that you have behind the wheel for long periods of time. At the end of a shift, it might not be that energy may not be there to go out and do the push-ups or run around the truck or ride the bicycle or other things. And then you think about the demands of the day-to-day demands and how it not only physically drains you, but it emotionally drains you as well. So when I think about that, how did you manage the ability to integrate those healthier habits into your demanding lifestyle? Because it's not just the demanding lifestyles of a driver, that's a lot, right? So the lifestyle of a driver is difficult. But then you layer on the lifestyle of a business owner that's a driver, which is an owner operator. So you add that on there too. How in the heck did you determine how I'm going to integrate this? This is going to be the way things work, and there's nothing going to stop me from doing so.
So first, it's a determination, right? You make the decision that if I'm going to run my trucking business, I'm going to run my health the way I run my business so that it's effective and I get the results that I want. So the thing that I would like to say, and this is good advice for any truck driver, whether you're an owner operator or not, is you have to understand that just like you get a certain mile per gallon out of your truck, and it's something that you should know and understand, you usually burn a set amount of calories to lose a pound. So if you know that number, it's about 3,500 calories in a pound, and you understand daily how many calories you burn by existing, which is called your basal metabolic rate. You can turn everything that you have in the form of math and how you manage your trucking business into everything in the form of math inside of how you manage your body. So, for example, if you're sitting around, generally you only burn 40 to 70 calories an hour inside of your truck. But if you pull up at a shipper, and we all know that shippers love to detain us while we're getting loaded, right? What you can do is you can spend an hour, maybe sometimes 2 hours, walking around your truck. And in an hour, you burn 250 calories generally just by walking around. And so if you think about it like this, if you can find 2 hours a day to just walk around the truck, this is what I did. And then you make sure that you're eating less than you burn in a day for your basal metabolic rate. As long as you're going 500 calories into deficit every single day, 7 days a week, you'll burn a pound a week. So the reason that I say this is because if you can run a business, you can run your health. It isn't necessarily as much about what you eat, though you should eat healthy. It's about what you do with your time, how you introduce small steps to make big changes over time. For me, I also made sure that I lowered the distance between my habits, my desires, and the food that I had in the truck. So I would make sure that on my 34-hour break, that I would take my personal conveyance and I would go to a grocery store and either keep a cooler or a refrigerator full of healthy food that I could enjoy. Some of it warm, but most of it cold and easy, ready to prepare that I could eat right when I wanted to eat. I found that it was a lot easier that way because then I didn't want to go inside the truck stop. I could be active. I didn't have to take a lot of time to acquire food. And I was less likely to fall victim to the impulses of being inside of a truck stop and being surrounded by junk food that drew my attention.
Too, have you? I guess this is a question that I would ask of you as well. Have you noticed any shifts? Being in that space, being that advocate for health, have you noticed any shifts in the industry's approach to driver health and wellness over the years, from the time that you got behind the seat of the truck to now? And then I guess when you look at that, is there any improvements that you advocate so heavily for when it comes down to it?
Absolutely. So, what I am happy to say is that I'm seeing that we're becoming health conscious as a whole inside of the trucking industry. When I got into trucking, I did not see a whole lot of emphasis inside of how important it was for truck drivers to take care of their health. A lot of it was just non invasive suggesting, like, hey, buddy, eat an apple. Hey, try to eat some grapes. Hey, make sure that what you're doing is getting more fruit in your diet instead of eating all this junk food, right? So, what I can say is that now we've seen longtime fitness advocates like Bob Perry in a culture that's very connected with new up and coming influencers and industry voices come together and have more of a platform, more of an engaged community that cares deeply about this. Because we've seen the trucking industry go through a lot of ups and downs, especially post COVID. And so health is a major expense. Insurance claims are a major expense, right? The heart issues that truck drivers struggle with, the diabetes, the obesity, puts them into situations where they're more likely to be involved in major accidents that not only cost lives and destroy the life of the driver, but can also end up hitting a trucking company's bottom line operationally in an environment where there's law firms that are engaging in nuclear lawsuits regularly. So people as a whole are seeing that it's really important to take care of the driver's health, not just from a humanitarian aspect, but from a cost saving standpoint. And so I'm really excited because a lot of people in the industry are focusing on weight loss, obesity, overall wellness. We have Mother Trucker Yoga. We have Dr. Mark Manera. We have Michael Lombari. We have really amazing people in this industry who are at the forefront, at the vanguard, doing something about this. But what I would say I'm most passionate about specifically is medication access. There's a woman who's one of my close friends, and her father died of pneumonia in a truck stop, because he lacked basic access to antibiotics. So a big part of what we do at our company is we make sure that truck drivers have access to essential prescription medications and 24/7 access to a doctor, so that they have an urgent care prescribed to them based on their medical history that rides with them inside of the cab. For me, I think the role that we're contributing inside of our company is ensuring that, because we as blue collar workers are more likely to put our work ethic, and our career first in service of team, in service of the country, in service of this industry, we're more likely to put our health in the back seat. So small issues become large issues over time, then end up with truckers dying of pneumonia in the truck stop, then end up with people getting infections that go out of control and spread across the body and give them $40,000 hospital bills that they can't afford. That happened to me. That's a big part of why I made this, just because I didn't have basic access to antibiotics.
So,
So I think that overall,
no, I'm sorry to cut you off.
oh, you're fine. So I think that overall, to answer your question, there's a new initiative towards making sure that driver health and wellness is a core part of every single trucking company's policy and vision.
No, and I think that too, you're what you're doing, and we're going to get to that here in a second, is really groundbreaking, because you saw a problem and you said, hey, you know what? I don't see a definitive solution for it. And instead of me just, banging the tables and screaming to the hills, I'm going to create a solution for that problem. And I thought that was very, very, very inspirational and well needed. And when you think about your personal health journey, you're motivated by your personal health journey. You were an owner operator, right? And you started your own trucking company as an owner operator. We've seen your journeys on TikTok or in a variety of other platforms. I think you took a load to Alaska. I think that
I did, man. That was an adventure.
yeah, I saw that. That was pretty cool. You were I mean, you were way out of there. So I mean, you were always, just from the back, on the outside looking in, you were always just like, hey, I'm gonna go get it. If I see it, I want to go after it. So when you find that motivation, from an owner operator standpoint, you founded a company called Truckers Body Shop. And could you share and expound upon the vision behind that telehealth platform, how it aims to address the unique challenges of healthcare challenges that drivers face out there, and how you feel that this is the solution to the problem that is really, really going to define the future of the trucking industry?
I really appreciate you saying that, Adam. So first, love the load to Alaska. It was one of the most transformational experiences that I've had in my entire life. To be surrounded by nature so vast that it makes you feel small, your problems feel small. It's incredibly therapeutic. If anyone ever has the opportunity to haul a load to Alaska, drive the Alaskan highway up through Yukon and into Alaska, they've got to do it. There's nothing like it. But to answer your question about Truckers Body Shop, Truckers Body Shop exists because our healthcare industry is generally not tailored to the needs of a mobile population, right? And so as a result, we're moving targets, and we need something that works within that side of that system. And that means that being able to schedule medication access and doctor visits to align with a truck driver's schedule, and in a format where they can easily message, text, or call a doctor when they need them, instead of trying to sit around and get a static appointment, is necessary. And at the same time, being able to have intervention-based medication, like the 23 medications we have that can treat over 50 different common illnesses and infections, all FDA approved, for the flu, for bronchitis, for pneumonia, for issues with breathing, food poisoning, and a variety of other issues, is essential. This is something where something that can cost only $400 to produce can save $40,000 in hospital bills when somebody's struggling to get access to this stuff, figure out where to park a 72-foot long vehicle over the road, get to a doctor, get that doctor to write them a prescription, end up at the pharmacy, and try to do that while navigating working 70 hours a week and tight deadlines in a market that is completely unforgiving. So the thing that I would say is that's where we are now, is we fit inside of the truck driver schedule. We deliver to their needs. We make medication available, and we give them plans tailored to understanding how their brains and their bodies work and fit into their experience and their lifestyle from people who have lived it and can help them make a difference in their life. But that's not where we're stopping. We're going into a beautiful new realm of decentralized pharmaceutical manufacturing technology. We're working with FDA agents, partners inside of the pharmaceutical development space in order to create something really beautiful, which is essentially a machine that sits inside of a truck stop and is able to manufacture and prescribe medication on the spot. So think about it as like a red box. You come into this truck stop, you visit with your doctor over the phone, and if you take, say, thyroid medication normally with your primary care physician, you input your medical history, you see the doctor, and then on that machine, you're going to have a scanner and you're going to be able to have ID verification. And what ends up happening is after you see your doctor in about 10 minutes, that prescription can be sent directly to the machine, fulfilled for you right there. So you don't have to struggle to get your medications at home. You can get everything you need over the road. What we think that is really missing is that we have this population of people who don't live in the normal world that everyone else does. The average truck driver sees a doctor 0.6 times a year. The average person sees a doctor 2.8 times a year. That is completely insane, right? So we have to make sure that it's not hard for a truck driver to put their health first and that there's an ecosystem of accessibility for them because no one else is doing that.
You know, and also one of the things that I want to make sure people understand that are listening to this call, that you didn't just found this and just went running off of an idea and a concept without support. You have a medical team that's on staff
Yeah.
that are pushing through from a vision standpoint, support standpoint as well. And then honestly, when you look at telehealth has catapulted over the last 5 years since COVID really kind of just explode,
Oh, yeah.
kind of had people think a little bit differently. But coming into telehealth inside the cab is something that probably, like you said, it's accessibility. It's related to being able to access those things. So when I walk through and I think about the truck as a body shop, and so you can help simplify this journey out so that way, folks on this call can truly understand what influenced the design, the implementation of services. And then once you looked at that, when the test phase came out, how did you make it to where it's so simple that if I'm a driver, I become a member of the telehealth community, I have access to, XYZ platforms. Where did that thinking come from? Was that all Garrett, or was it, hey, you know what, we have a phenomenal team? Kind of walk me through that step.
So that's a great question. So this really started as my brainchild. I said, what do I want that would work specifically for me as a truck driver? And then I went out and I said, okay, well, now I have money, I have an idea, I have a plan. How do I then take this and find the people necessary to make sure that I'm complying with FDA regulations,
Yeah.
I'm complying with FTC regulations, I'm working with board certified physicians that have good records, I'm implementing the proper security protocols for data so that everything is HIPAA compliant and safe. And then I went out, I found all those people, I got the law firms, I built the friends, I built the connections, I built the physician network in all 50 states. And then I brought everything together. Now, one of the biggest things that I've done is create the UI, the UX. Like I had a brief history inside of design. I started up a marketing company that I then sold off while I was truck driving. So the branding, a lot of the colors, a lot of the overall aesthetics, that was essentially my vision, my baby. And I worked with an amazing team to execute on that. So with that being said, what we really did was we started with what do we want that serves us? Okay, who are the people to make that happen? All right, let's implement that and come up with the feel that we want for that to look like. And inside of the platform, we also understood that we wanted people to be able to engage in a membership for taking control of their health. And we also wanted them to be able to be in a position where if they wanted something like the Medi Ready bag, this could be a one-time purchase, right? So they could grab this, have 24/7 access to a doctor for an entire year, completely unlimited, so that they could just message them whenever they need it. And so on the back end of that, we had to come up with specialized pricing, work with a really amazing team and say, hey, listen, we expect this much volume. It looks like this. This is how we would expect people to talk with you, so that we could create something where we were doing something different. Instead of making it so that, like traditional telehealth platforms, somebody would have to schedule an appointment, get on a call, get on a Zoom. Instead, they could come to the platform once they'd made a purchase, and they could text the doctor and say, hey, I have this concern right now. What do I do? Right. So, like, for example, someone gets the Medi Ready bag and they're going over the road. They've already paid us once. They have the medications, they have the doctor access. And let's say that they start feeling sick over the road. They just get in the app, they text the doctor, they say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. The doctor might say, okay, send me a picture, tell me a bit more. And then they'll say, okay, well, here's the diagnosis. In your bag, there's this medication. Take this medication and keep me updated. And when you use up the medication, we'll schedule your refill so that it arrives on your time. So we designed this with the user experience in mind and the problems that we faced as truck drivers and as individuals. So it was idea, team, execution, refinement.
When you look at your aspirations on the future of Truckers Body Shop, from where it is now, what do you see it 5 years down the road? I know you mentioned, hey, we're looking at the kiosk and the truck stops. That's something that we really want to push out. What do you see that next steps? Outside of that, what are some of those things that you think are still missing? What are still some of the problems that need solutions when it comes down to driver health over the road?
Mm. So what I'd like for us to do is with the nationwide rollout of our pharmaceutical kiosks, what we want to do is then go there, provide that medication access, and then we want to be able to affect cultural change through, I should say, healthy propaganda, right? We want to run distributed marketing campaigns across all platforms, working in conjunction with trucking companies. We've even talked about doing rebates so that as we build profits inside of our company, there's a certain point where we cover operational costs and we don't care about anything else other than the mission itself. So we're interested in making the opportunity for it to be more cost effective and for us to motivate trucking companies more to take control of their drivers' health and really invest inside of that. So what that would look like is us giving essentially what's like a credit to trucking companies that work with us inside of their systems in order to positively tackle driver health. It's no longer about making money, right? It's about making a difference inside of an industry where
Sure.
every single statistic towards truck driver health has an impact not just on the costs of moving freight, not just on the cost that the end consumer pays, but on the cost of life for an industry of people who live on average 16 years less than the average American and sacrifice with work weeks that can often be twice as
Yeah.
long as the average American, right? So I'd say that it'd be the rollout, it'd be the credits, and then in 5 years, we'd be looking at being able to make it so that there's no excuse for truck drivers to not be equipped with essential healthy habits and information for the industry to hopefully be in a space with or without our direct intervention through the cultural shift to ensure that more healthy food is accessible at truck stops and to ensure that medication is both affordable and accessible for truck drivers over the road. I will say one thing. What we're most passionate about outside of this is how much medication costs. There's a really bad environment right now inside of the healthcare industry to where there's these entities called PBMs. So they're pharmaceutical benefit manufacturers. I'll give you a great example. One of the reasons why Ozempic ended up costing so much when it first came out is because of these PBMs acting like brokers in between all of the entities inside of
Mhm.
the healthcare industry, your insurance companies, your medication manufacturers, the end user. And so almost half of the costs in producing a medication and selling it is given to those brokers in the middle, the PBMs. It's absolutely crazy. I had a direct conversation with Novo Nordisk, and they told me, hey, listen, the reason that these medications are not cheaper is because of the PBMs. So, one of the things that we care deeply about is ensuring that the healthcare industry is not predatory and that there's opportunity to build our own manufacturing, work with our own entities, create our own ecosystem in which medication is not priced for profit. It's priced to save lives. It's priced to provide value.
You had a boots at the match this year. You guys were in
Yes.
front of tens of thousands of truck drivers and such. What has been the response from the community overall? We launched, since you launched the Truckers Body Shop, what was that overall response? And then a follow-up for that would be share what a success story looks like, just say that stands out from the time you launched this. Maybe it's perhaps a success story that you have for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So the response that we got was often, this is amazing. I need one. It makes me feel like I can do anything if I have this in my truck. And also, why hasn't this existed yet? This is such a
Yeah,
smart idea,
yeah, yeah.
right? And so we love that feedback. We got a lot of it. And we ended up finding our real slogan, especially around the Medi Ready bag, which is just don't die over the road. Truckers deserve better. So we're trying to be that better. Now, as far as an amazing success story that we've had, we had a guy who came onto our platform by the name of Kyle. I won't say his last name. He hasn't given me permission to
Yeah,
give everything out.
sure.
But he ended up losing almost 80 pounds with us.
Wow.
So, yeah, we're very happy about that. He's an amazing guy. We're working on putting him, platforming him out so that he can be a brand ambassador to us, talk about his journey. It's an incredible story.
So when you look at costs, just for the audience, what are the typical cost of the trucker's body shop and services that you guys provide?
Yeah, so it varies based upon the service. So the Medi Ready kit, as an example, is a $400 bag that sits inside of your truck, works like an urgent care in a bag with 23 medications prescribed to your medical background. You pay that once, and then the medications last for a year. You get unlimited doctor access. And then at the end of the year, those medications are sent back to us, and we'll either dispose of them or if they're still good, post testing, we'll take them, send them to South America or Africa where they can be recycled as life saving medications for underserved populations. So then we replace the medications in the bag for about, I think it's around $150. So it's at cost of production plus that cost of shipping. And then you still have 24/7 doctor access. Now, our other services, they vary, right? So if you want to be a member inside of Trucker's Body Shop, for the weight loss program, it's $79 a month plus the cost of weight loss medication if you're choosing to be on that medication, right? We do the semaglutide, we do the tirzepatide. Right now, we're working on getting with a new provider that allows us to prescribe name brand medication in
Mhm.
alignment with insurance, as well as some of the cheaper options affordable through Eli Lilly, through Novo Nordisk for the direct to consumer side if you don't have insurance. So the way that that would work is if you have the right kind of insurance, you would expect to pay about $25 to $40 a month for the weight loss medication in addition to the cost of the membership. Now, if it's going to be something like you don't have insurance and your insurance doesn't want to cover it, the options are going to be closer to around $550 a month. And sometimes, just depends on availability, we're able to do a package. And this is usually a deal that happens seasonally, where we're able to do 3 months of medication for about $550. So the cost varies, right? It's
Yeah.
contextual. It's all transparent and upfront on the website as far as the service that you're getting at the time. But we do what we can to make sure that everything is affordable as possible.
Oh, no, that sounds great. And I think that again, you came out with your own operator that was a visionary. You saw a problem out there, and like I said, commend you for not just pounding the pavement, really taking actionable insights and saying, hey, you know what, we got to fix this problem. I'm going to put my resources together. I'm going to figure this thing out. We're going to provide a solution, and then thus birth Truckers Body Shop, which just in the short time that you've had the company, it's done phenomenally well, and I can already see an impact that it's going to make. To close things out, as we wrap things up, our podcast is titled The Long Haul. And beyond its connotation, what does this phrase signify for you on a personal level? Especially in light of your transformative journey, whether it be personal and your entrepreneurial ventures. What is that phrase, the long haul? What does that land with you?
Hmm. I felt chills as you said that. When you're in something for the long haul, it means that beyond the experiences that you have in this moment, you're mission driven. You're a part of the process. When you're in something for the long, you realize that bigger than the perspective that you have in the moment, bigger than the stories that you tell yourself, there is not just a journey, but a destination that you can arrive at when you take the right steps. And when you haul freight cross country, you're going to come across difficulties. You're going to come across traffic jams. You're going to come across inclement weather. You're going to come across delays. But when you're in it for the long haul and you make it to that destination, those things don't matter. As long as you take the actions, you allow yourself to overcome those obstacles and be flexible with who you are and respect to being willing to be the person necessary to keep going and never give up, you will get exactly what you want. The thing that is most beautiful about the trucking industry is it is still one of those spaces where, with determination, hard work, and a proper plan, you can still get exactly the American dream that you desire. And that is why I think trucking is a sacred industry.
So well stated. And again, Garrett, just inspired by your journey, not only your personal journey with the weight loss and providing the insights on how someone else can do the same, to the entrepreneurial journey that you had where you saw a problem within the industry, and instead of taking a solution and finding another problem for it, you found a solution for a problem that obviously is a long term, and it will help sustain the industry for the long haul. Thank you so much for joining us on our episode today. Super excited to see where the Truckers Body Shop looks, where it's going to be 5-10 years down the road. And I know that there's people on this call that's listening in today that can take this information and be able to change their lives as well. So thank you so much for joining us today, Garrett.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Adam. It was a pleasure.
All right. Well, as you all know, we're closing out today. Make sure that you take these insights, and whether it be something that you caught on this call or something that you saw that inspires you to take to the next level, remember, you're in it for the long haul, and we'll see you on the next episode.